Hey guys, I thought I'd share a little bit of my backstory. I've shared how Music Strong came to be, but I haven't really shared much about myself and how I got started. Just a quick little backstory is that both of my parents are entrepreneurs. My dad worked at Saturn for 30 years. He worked at GM, probably built my first car, second car. And when he got old enough to quit, he didn't want to say retire, he started his own business doing computer stuff. And I'm going to leave it at computer stuff because I don't quite know what he does. And my mom was my elementary school librarian. She got a degree in library science. And then when we moved from Michigan to Tennessee when I was 10, she decided she didn't want to do library anymore. And she'd always loved the works of M.C. Escher. If you haven't looked him up, I guarantee you've seen his work and not known it. He did things like the Impossible Staircase on charcoal and bubbles and all those kind of artwork. She'd always loved quilting, and she decided to teach herself geometry and all kinds of stuff, and has created this incredible business where she literally travels the world teaching people optical illusion quilting. She's published like 6, 9, a bunch of books. I don't even know how many anymore. She's published a bunch of books. She's a celebrated author. She's somewhat of a celebrity in the quilt world. Her name is Karen Combs, if you haven't seen her. And she not only, I'll remember when I came home in like 4th or 5th grade, she was covered in ink. And what was happening was she was out on her back deck with buckets. I thought she was tie-dyeing, but she was really learning how to dye fabric. And from those humble beginnings and us making, fat quarters and doing all these kinds of things on our spare time, she had me and my brother helping her. She now owns her own fabric line of batiks, and she's traveled the world, like to India and Polynesia and all these places to see where the batiks are made and meet the people. And she does these, I'm not gonna say celebrity cruises, but my mom she created a niche out of nothing. And so have I, which I guess it's kind of in my blood. My brother is also an entrepreneur at heart. He hasn't found his calling yet, but I have great faith in him. So I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and that's a little bit of my family story. For me, I picked up the flute before I knew I wanted to be a flute player. I mean, my mom had this flute, and I remember taking it out and looking at it, and it's shiny, and it's in this purple velvet, and just like staring at it, like, oh my gosh, I want to play this. So when I begged for lessons, and Mom said no, and they said, you gotta wait till you get in band. So when I got to 6th grade, I learned how to play. I was just like, I have an instrument, I'm gonna play flute. I got a sound right away, and from the second I got a sound, I was totally hooked on playing the flute. I spent all my time in the band room, before school, after school. In fact, there was one day I missed the bus because instead of waiting for the bus, I went down to the band room to practice. Oops. And missed the bus. Mom was not happy. She had to leave her quilting stuff and come pick me up. Anyway, so then I went to Interlochen as a high schooler, which changed my worldview completely. I realized I wasn't the big fish in the small pond anymore. I was now a small fish in a very large pond, up-leveled my game, got my first injury, and then that's when I first got introduced to the idea that musicians are expected to play for long hours, and those numbers are actually really arbitrary. There was no physical preparation for me to go from playing, a couple hours a day to 8 hours a day for 8 weeks. And that was my first foray into learning that musicians are athletes and that there was a higher calling for me. So coming from this family of entrepreneurs, once I got my master's degree, and the reason I got my master's is because I knew I got both my degrees in performance because music was my life, is my life. And I knew that I didn't know everything I needed to know, and that's where I wanted to be. It wasn't that I wanted to get a doctorate and I wanted to teach the collegiate level, I wanted to do all these things, or I really wanted a symphony job for life. I knew there was something else out there for me, but I didn't know what that was. I did know I didn't have all the knowledge I needed as a musician. So when I graduated with my master's, then I thought, I wonder, I've always loved fitness. I wonder if personal training is kind of like teaching flute lessons. And I fell in love with it because instead of one-on-one teaching people how to play an instrument, you were one-on-one teaching them about their bodies and really empowering people to change their lives. And then, from there, you've heard my story of how Music Strong came to be. That's a little bit of my backstory I thought I'd want to share. And if there's a lesson that I've learned, if I'm thinking like character and what my backstory is and lessons that I've learned, it's don't expect school to teach you everything. Most of what I learned in music school has not a direct bearing on my business. And there's so much about business that I still don't know, and I'm learning every day. I always feel like I'm about 10 years behind, which I know I'm not, but I feel that way, you know? So don't be afraid to ask. Don't be afraid to branch out. Don't be afraid to use a degree for a different reason than what most people tout it for. Just because you have a performance degree doesn't mean you have to perform 100% for a living. You can use that piece of knowledge and that tool in whatever way suits you best. And that's exactly what I'm trying to do. So the lessons I've learned are just to keep going. Life is a journey of trying to figure it out. And when people say, oh, you know, you're an adult, you know things. No, adults are just older people who still make guesses, you know, and entrepreneurs are making more risky guesses. So that's where I am, that's my story. And I hope this gives you a little bit of insight into my life and how I came to be. And I hope you have a wonderful Tuesday.